Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to my YouTube videos. I am now officially old, like officially a grandma of YouTube, but I'm starting a series called Muslimah Diaries, where I get real about the thoughts of hijab, the thoughts of being a Muslim woman in the West, etc., etc., the struggles, the battles, you name it, everything related to being a Muslim women. Yes. So I'm going to start off by talking about my hijab story or journey. Now, I know there's a lot of conflict when it comes to the term journey, but what I mean is the process of not knowing to the process of knowing, a journey to get to the correct hijab. So, when I first wore the hijab, I was 16, 17. Let me talk about that little era, that little time that I had. So, when I was 16, I actually did not know that the hijab was fard. No one around me wore the hijab. I was living in a town. I didn't have much access to knowledge. I only had Google and Instagram and YouTube. So, my understanding of hijab, and I really need to stop shouting because I've got a mic here. And everyone told me in my last YouTube videos I am so fast and I'm so loud. So, when I was 16, when I was 16, I did not know hijab was fard. So when I did some digging, I found out that hijab is actually fard upon every believing Muslim women. Women? Why am I getting confused by women and woman? Woman? Anyway, it was fard. So that's when I was like, oh no, I have to start wearing the hijab and I have to start taking this a little bit more seriously. So I did my digging, I found out it's fard, and then I did my order. So I ordered hijabs, I ordered hijab pins, I ordered hijab ties by the neck and the chiffon style. We had the crinkle styles, we had the undercup to match the hijab. And the reason why, when I'm talking about hijab, I'm just talking about the head covering, is because when I was on Google and I typed in hijab, I found just the head covering. When I typed hijab styles and outfits and tutorials onto YouTube, I only found influencers who were wearing turban styles, who were wearing just the head covering with their clothing. So as a young teenager, I started to replicate and I started to copy those trends and styles because that was kind of my access to knowledge. Like if these older women are dressing the hijab like this, then this must be the hijab. This must be correct, right? Influencer, it's in the name. You get influenced. So I started doing that. I ordered a batch of hijabs. I was excited. I was ready. And I wore it on my 17th birthday. I made an oath to myself that I would either wear the hijab on my birthday or I would stop thinking about it because it was getting to the point where I was like battling it in my nerves. I was like, tomorrow, 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 tomorrow. And then I was like, I'm going to pick a day and I'm going to dedicate that day to wearing the hijab and never looking back. So I decided 17. 17 was that time. So when I blew the candles, I decided the next day when I go to school, sixth form, I'm gonna wear the hijab. And I did. Alhamdulillah, I made the correct decision at the time. And it was just me and my friend wearing the hijab in the whole of sixth form. Now, when I look at sixth forms and high schools, they are so diverse, Allahumma barik, that I probably would not have struggled as much as I did. So, yeah, I wore the hijab. A lot of people didn't know I was Muslim. They thought I was just supporting my friends. Um, to be honest, when I wore the hijab, certain people wouldn't walk with me and certain people wouldn't take me to school. So, it was a struggle. But I was firm. I stood my ground. My iman was actually Allahumma barik, it was actually very strong at that time for a 16-year-old in a town because the fact that I made that decision and I strived and I done everything on my own. Alhamdulillah, I even got the bus on my own in hijab, which was a big thing. At the time, I used to work in a corner shop in the buses where the buses would come, and I was in the corner shop and I wore my hijab, and I would get questions like, "Are you Muslim? Why are you wearing that?" Because I think it's because I was white and I was wearing a headscarf. And people were like, what is this about? So yeah, it was hard. I struggled and I strived, and things like you don't feel pretty in it, you don't fit in, you're having an identity crisis, you're trying to deconstruct what society has socialized into you in your conscious and your unconscious. But nevertheless, I kept it on and I strived in it, and I'm proud of myself for doing so. And then came university. Now, university, when I was packing my stuff, I was petrified to wear the hijab at uni. Bearing in mind, I've never left my town, never met other sisters. Only this one friend that I had, Lama Barik, was amazing. She wore the hijab. So I was like, mom, Mom, do I wear the hijab? My mom was like, it's completely your decision. Like, I can't tell you what to do. So I decided to wear it, and I'm so glad I did because when I got there, the Islamic Society, which I had no knowledge about, the uni I picked was, I felt like it was a white area, but it was so diverse. Met the Islamic Society. I met so many wonderful sisters, Allahumma barik, most of them in hijab. So I felt I fit right in. I was like, you know what, this was meant to be because I fitted right in. And I met a beautiful sister. I think she was VP at the time. She was wearing this beautiful black abaya and hijab, and I was like, wow, like she is covered. And I was like, starting to seek more knowledge. Like, what is the hijab? How do we wear it? And I came across the conditions of hijab. And I think actually the talk that she was giving was about hijab. So I was like, there's conditions to hijab that I'm not meeting, that I'm not understanding. So here's me going through the process of enlightenment, trying to understand the hijab once more. Because let's be real, the only thing that I was wearing was a head covering, and I was still maintaining my clothing. I was just covering my, you know, bum. I was literally just covering my bum, but I was still maintaining my hijab on my head. So this time I was like, oh my God, there's conditions that I need to meet that Allah has set for me as a Muslim woman. So I was striving to that, and I ordered an abaya. It was like those polystyrene ones. I ordered an abaya to and I ordered them off eBay at the time. We didn't have Amazon, I don't think. So I ordered it off eBay and I wore them, and I loved it. I really didn't struggle with wearing the abaya as much as I thought I would. I wore the abaya and I kept that on. I did go through phases where I would wear a long skirt and then abaya, long skirt, abaya. But these abayas were still quite tight. They weren't like loose batwing style abayas and jilbabs. They were a bit tight. You could still tell that I was not, you could still see my figure. So I strived more into that. And then, yeah, and then I just stuck to the abaya and long skirts with the hijab for a long time. Then this same sister, Allahumma barik, may Allah rewards her, she brought her niqab, and I was like, what? Because bearing in mind, I used to hate niqabs. I used to think they were extremists. They did not represent Islam. And she brought the niqab with her to the coach that we were in. And I was like, can I try it? Can I please try it? And I tried it and I was like, oh my God, like I actually love the niqab. I didn't do any research into the niqab. I just loved it, right? I just fell in love. It was a feeling. It wasn't based on knowledge and foundation. So I did actually order myself some niqabs and I got them from Sunnah Style at the time. They were £13 each. Now, as a uni student, I was broke already and I spent £13 on a niqab, but I knew Allah would reward me. And I wore the niqab just off of instinct. I didn't wear it off of knowledge, off of anything. And I loved it. And at the time, it was just me and her wearing the niqab on campus. There was no one really else wearing it. And that was hard because you would get a lot of stares, but you would get a lot of respect from the brothers. They would not look at you in the eyes. Whereas when you're wearing abayas, they didn't lower their gaze as much. When you were wearing niqab, they lowered their gazes. Now, I don't know if anyone else has spotted this. But when you're in niqab, you get a lot more respect, which shouldn't be the case. You should get respect regardless. But that's just something that I noticed. And I wore the niqab and I wore the hijab, and then I started to transition into jilbabs. And it was all because of this sister that I literally came across who influenced me into wearing the correct hijab. Now, influence is a very strong term, and it's something that in 2025, social media strives off and makes a profit of. Hijabi influencers. They are so powerful and they don't even understand it. They can influence a sister into the correct hijab or the incorrect hijab. Now, this is why I feel like social media presence for the correct hijab is so important because when I was a teenager, we didn't have that. We literally would look at the hijabi influencers at the time and emulate their styles, copy their styles, order what they ordered, not knowing that that's how they made profit and that's how they made commissions into selling these hijabs and these styles and these outfits, which did not meet the correct hijab. Could you imagine being a hijabi influencer and influencing thousands and thousands and thousands of women into the incorrect hijab without putting a notice like, by the way, I'm struggling in hijab and this is my style and I know it's not correct, but I'm a human being. That's one thing. But another thing into calling something hijab and it is not the hijab. Now, I'm not being a hater. I'm not being haram police. I'm talking about my own personal struggles. When you see something labeled as the hijab and you see a certain clothing, your brain networks. It does a link. Hijab association, hijab association. Now imagine you're scrolling hijab association, hijab association. and then you're thinking, okay, this is hijab, this is how it should be. And you're not thinking deeper because your brain has made a neural link between the two. And that's what literally happens to me. And it's still happening today, 7, 8 years later. We are being fed the wrong hijab. Now, it's one thing to struggle. We all struggle into the process of wearing the correct hijab. But to label something as the hijab when it's not is very, very dangerous and very misleading. So I just wanted to put that out there. And I know a lot of people might be like, okay, hater, blah, 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 but this is the reality and I need to speak the truth. I cannot, you know, hold back that information. But yeah, so um I really did struggle at the time, and alhamdulillah, I've kept it on. Alhamdulillah, I've stayed firm with it. In terms of the niqab, there have been times where I've taken it off and put it back on, taking it off and putting it back on. And I would say this is just a personal struggle that I have. A half niqab, full niqab, string niqab, just covering the face. This is just a personal struggle that I have with the niqab itself. And the hijab, I do face struggles taking it off, not feeling beautiful enough, not feeling like my outfit is worthy enough. And with Eid coming up, we are going to get influenced into wearing again the incorrect hijab, going all out, going all glitz and glam and beautiful for Eid. And this is the works of shaitan. This is literally the work. This is what shaitan wants you to do. After a whole month of pleasing Allah, he wants you on Eid day to go back to pleasing shaitan and doing full glitz and glam on Eid, and celebrating in a way that is displeasing to Allah. You just spent the whole month in ibadah, pleasing Allah, and you're celebrating in a way that pleases shaitan. And I've seen so many adverts, so many paid ads, so many collaborations to persuade women, Muslim women, to persuade other Muslim women into wearing the incorrect hijab on Eid day without notice, without them any knowledge, without any, like FYI, I'm struggling with the hijab. Do not copy this. This is just my personal struggle. Just understand that this is the world that we live in. Influence. Everything around us is designed to influence you in a direction, to buy or not to buy, to emulate or not to emulate, to follow or not to follow. And it's your job to stand firm on the decisions that you make with knowledge that everything that you do is pleasing to Allah, and not have this clash where it's pleasing Allah and it's pleasing society. It's pleasing Allah, and it's because you're actually going to struggle and you're going to have a mental breakdown if you're trying to do both. You can't do both. You have to pick. Do I want to please Allah, or do I want to please this dunya? Am I going to wear hijab for the sake of Allah, or am I going to wear hijab for the sake of, campaigns, ads, brands, influencers, for my friends? Be firm and be strong on the decisions that you make, because in the end of the day, we're going to be alone in our graves, and everything that we have done and impacted in this dunya will come back to us. Not to so and so, not to so, but come back to you. You can't be like, I'm going to hold that. Well, you can hold that person accountable for influencing you, of course. And, that's one thing that you should be mindful of. But just remember, at the end of the day, we're going to be alone in our graves. We're going to be standing on our own decisions. And I just want to leave you guys with that note. But assalamu alaikum. Please comment down below if you've benefited from this video, if you want me to talk about anything else. But this was just a warm up for me to kind of bring back my videos and my content onto the YouTube platform. And I am active on TikTok and I am active on Instagram. I'll put them down below if I'm good at editing. But yeah, peace out.